The Anubian Empire began when the pharaoh, King Termagush, received a vision from the god Anubis. The vision was a world in flames and darkness, where all who were unworthy were destroyed in the chaos, and those who were worthy ascended to rise from the grave. The vision the pharaoh had seen was the apocalypse, where the world was destroyed by Anubis, and those who worshipped him escaped it through undeath. To most sentient beings, undeath would be a curse, but to the Anubians, it was something they strived for. However, in order for the apocalypse to come, a great war was supposed to take place. So, King Termagush, the harbinger of Anubis, set out to conquer the world in preparation for the apocalypse. Those who accepted his rule were saved from Anubis' wrath, while those who rebelled were tortured and killed without mercy. When the Anubians conquered their entire home continent, they began building ships for the rest of the world of Mistavar. Eventually, after colonizing most of the Shateric Ocean's many islands, they happened upon Teradar and sent scouting ships to investigate. The first race they came in contact with was the humans, who attacked them on sight. When the scouts reported back to their king, invasion armies were brought onto the Goric Isles of Tropia, south of present-day Brinori. Once there, they enslaved the barbarian orcs in the area, and built a great temple to Anubis to act as a base of operations. Meanwhile, another invasion force sailed around the continent to touch down in the forest of Everpine. When the elves of Everpine met the Anubians, the battle lasted only an hour before the defenders were overwhelmed and fled. With their main army in the north fighting the dwarves and goblins, the elves had no choice but to evacuate their homes. However, the elves of Everpine had nowhere to evacuate to. Worse yet, their standing army was cut off, with no idea of what was going on in their homeland. As a small force pursued the fleeing elves, the rest of the Anubians conquered Everpine and then moved upward to the dwarven mine of Rundragar, near the region of Njorfar. When the Anubians attacked, they caught the elves and dwarves by surprise, as they had been fighting prior to their arrival. A great number of elves and dwarves were destroyed before the dwarves retreated into their mine and the elves withdrew. The Anubians then broke up their forces again, this time with a smaller force chasing the elven army and the rest besieging Rundragar. Within more than a month, the gates finally fell and the Anubian war host took the dwarven mine. Luckily for the dwarves, most of them had already escaped through hidden tunnels linked directly to their city of Felgar. The Anubians found nothing but an empty city with collapsed tunnels and goblin raiders bearing down on them. The elven army made their way through the snowy wastes of Njorfar, frantically trying to outrun their new enemy, until eventually they found themselves heading towards Felgar, the city of the dwarves. The elves now had to choose to run headfirst into the axes of their lifelong enemy, or head back to be swept away by the Anubians. Either way, all hope seemed lost, but the elves were not prepared for what happened next. When the dwarven army came out to meet the elves, they made way for them to ride through and join their ranks. The elves quickly took that opportunity, and for the first time since the War of Creation, the elves and dwarves fought side by side. The small Anubian army, now weakened by the Arctic climate, was easily defeated. After the battle, Ordo, king of the dwarves, rode out to the elven army and extended his hand in peace. The elves were skeptical at first, but given the circumstances, they soon accepted the proposition for an alliance. From there, the dwarves and the elves started a massive campaign to retake their lost lands.